Hello and welcome to Bible Book Club. It is January 9th and we're starting a new year. And sorry we didn't get through the end of the book of Revelation by the end of last year, but we're finishing that up now. So we just thank everybody who participated in that, in reading through the Bible with us this year, and we thank you for joining us for that. So with the new year here, I just wanted to go over something that I learned from my Pentateuch class in Bible college in the 1980s. So one of our teachers had that taught the book of the Pentateuch, not the book of Pentateuch, but Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. But as he was teaching the book of Genesis, our teacher gave us kind of a breakdown of the outline of the book of Genesis, and it's something that stuck with me to this day. And he said the outline is creation, fall, flood, nations, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. So if you read through Genesis, you'll find that it starts out, the first couple chapters are talking about the creation, and then it goes on in the third chapter to speak of the fall of man, and the following chapters start talking about the generations from Adam, and how even some of the things that talk about the degeneration of man and how man began to be disobedient from God. So, and then the next, starting at chapter 6, I believe, is where it talks about the flood and how there was a lot of evil going on, and so God destroyed all of mankind except he saved Noah and his family. So Noah and his family are saved. So that's the flood. And then when you get past chapter 6 and 7 and some of those, then you go on to chapter 10, I believe it is, where it talks about where the Tower of Babel and how the people were trying to build up this something that would help them to reach to God. And instead of recognizing that God was reaching out to them and all they needed to do is receive that fellowship from him, instead they were trying to reach up to God to make themselves, to bring themselves up to his level, which is something we can never do. So during that time, God stopped them from what they were doing, and he destroyed the tower, and he confused their languages and separated them into different language groups. And from there, these people began to migrate around the world and developed the different nations of the world. And it's interesting, I found in some of my studies in the past, of how if you go back to DNA studies, that it shows that back around the time of the flood, or back at a certain time in history, the population of the world came down to about 8 people. And prior to that, there was a greater population that, when you follow that line all the way back, it goes to 2 individuals. And how all of our DNA can be traced back to those 2 individuals, and also the 8 individuals at a later time, which we recognize biblically to be the time of Noah's flood. So here we have creation, fall, flood, and nations. And then in chapter 12, we come down to the story of Abram, who God changed his name to Abraham, and how God had promised to him that through his descendants, all the world would be blessed. And that Abraham was unable to have children. He and his wife Sarah were barren, but God fulfilled his promise to Abraham and gave him a son that they named Isaac, that God named Isaac. And that son, through that son, the Jewish nation was birthed. Excuse me. So we have Abraham, his son Isaac, and then Isaac had twin sons, Jacob and Esau. And so Jacob gained the birthright, and then Joseph was his youngest son until Benjamin was born. But the son that Joseph was not part of the lineage of the Messiah, of Jesus Christ, but Joseph became somebody through whom the Israelites were preserved. And if you know the story of Joseph, when he was a young man, God gave him visions and dreams that he was going to one day be a mighty ruler and all his family would bow down to him. And he ended up being sold as a slave to Egypt, where he went. And in that country, he became the manager of a very important man's household. He, while he was there in the household, he became very prominent. But then his owner's wife wanted him sexually, and he refused her advances. And because of that, she lied about him and said that he had done things to her. And Joseph ended up in prison for some time. But when the time was right, God brought Joseph back out of prison in order to interpret the king's dreams for him. And then the king gave Joseph the second in power position next to him. And Joseph became the person that saved the nation of Israel. So that is kind of an overview of the book of Genesis. And thank you to, I think his name was Don Meyer, was our teacher that taught us this outline of the book of Genesis. And it's a very good one. And so as we read through the book of Genesis, keep that in mind, and it might help you to follow the storyline of what's happening. Joseph, the story of Joseph in the last several chapters, starting at 37 through 50, is a very touching and moving story, one that means a lot to me, and I believe you'll enjoy it too. Thanks for joining us for Bible Book Club, and we'll see you next time.